What is the Quranic Salah? Assalamu alaikum. I'm Moses, and this is 12th video of the series called Salat in the Quran that we have had running for the past 4 months. Welcome everybody who's joining in live, and assalamu alaikum to all those who will watch this presentation after this wraps up. So as I said before in the beginning, this is a live presentation. So if there are questions that are pertinent to what we're talking about, then there's a chance of interaction, two-way interaction to happen on the side as well, which is always, I think, a pretty good, neat thing to have when we're talking on topics like these. So before further ado, this, as I said before, is the 12th video of the series in which we've covered a lot. And as a result of this, I thought that we needed to summarize everything we talked about. We needed to put round out the edges, and there were a few questions that kept coming up all the time that I wanted to answer, and this is the opportunity to go have a talk about them as well. So in the comments, Assalamu alaikum to you, Muhammad Hussain. And there's another Muhammad Siam. Yes, okay, I'll take a comment, and maybe I'll have a chat about this after we wrapped up with this conversation today. So we will proceed. Assalamu alaikum to you as well, Qudsiya. So today I want to take us through the overview of the whole project, this whole Salat in the video series that we undertook. I say we because we were part of a group, and those who were involved throughout, you would know that there was two-way interaction from the beginning up until the end. So it was a project. It was a portfolio of videos and ayats that took its own life. So I would like to give an overview of how that panned out. And after that comes the gist of what we're here for, which is I intend to gather all the propositions throughout the videos regarding Salah and associated topics, put them together in today's video. And the intention is that once we put everything that we've discovered so far about the Salah in the Quran, what do we end up with? Does what we end up with still end up resembling the physical namaz, the physical salah, the physical prayer that we are told and made obligated to follow, or do we find something else? So this is the intent. So in the very beginning of the series, that is what I'd mentioned. I'd said up front that in the end, we'll do a conclusion, and that conclusion will put everything together in one holistic lot and look at them from a holistic perspective. Just having a quick look at the comments. Obeys God, Imran, Assalamu alaikum to you as well. I also wanted to answer a few commonly asked questions that kept coming up. So some of these questions were expected, some were those that I had not expected, but I had kind of thought that they would come up. So today is the opportunity to talk about them as well. And some of the really gnarly ones, some of the ones that kept coming up all the time, and I'm sure that is something that you would have thought about at some point in your life as well, which is, if the Quranic Salah is something different, then where did this physical prayer that we see today come from? What is its origin? How did we end up with it? And a question that's probably more prominent, that's more pertinent is, did Nabi Muhammad, did he do this physical namaz, this physical ritual prayer, this ritualistic act of devotion? Did he do that? Another question that kept coming up all the time was, well, having heard you and having heard the Quran, I still like doing this physical prayer. What do I do? Should I stop it? Should I continue to do it? Do I need to modify it, etc., etc.? So there were these questions that kept coming up all the time. And for those who were following the comments, you guys know that I did say that I would cover them eventually. I would talk about them. And today is the time to go through those sticky questions as well. I'd like to then talk about my personal observations, my learnings. This was not a one-way street. When we engage with the Quran, Quran engages with you. The more we delve, the more we learn, the more we end up sharing about them, hopefully, as well. So I would like to talk a little bit about that. Hopefully there are lessons for those who wish to ponder and engage the Quran. I, like always, would like to end with a warning. And at the very end of all of this series, I would like to do a summary of this summary video today, which will be one sentence. I kid you not. I would like to offer in one sentence a summary of the whole series. So if you're watching this video today, haven't watched anything before, none of the videos that we've talked about so far, it's skip everything, go to the very end, and just look at the summary of the summary. And I think that would at least give you an idea of what the Quranic Salah is and what it is not. I'll look at the comments before I proceed, and this is the intent of doing it live, because I quite like doing things live, because it changes things up a little. I feel a little bit more freer talking and communicating with people. And as I will talk about it, I do think that as part of my Salah, I find it quite reinvigorating to have these two-way interactions where we are bonding on nothing but over the word of God. And I don't think what other bonds could be stronger or more worth having. So we've got Aisha and Future Quran and Shahnawaz. Assalamu alaikum to all of you as well. Let's keep on progressing. Before we begin, on the bottom right-hand side, on the very bottom, today it's not a recorded session, so I don't unfortunately have a way to move my mouse, my cursor, so you can see where I'm pointing. There's no laser pointer at all today. But if you look at the bottom right, you will see there are a few sections that we'll be going through in sequence. So the idea is that down the track, if you were to come back to this video and watch it, you would know where we are based upon the part that would be highlighted in the legend, so to speak. I would like us to begin with a Quranic ayah that I believe has been grossly misunderstood. And this is one of the key videos that for me personally was a game changer as well. The ayah is to do with wudu, the ritual ablution that a mu'min is meant or supposed to do before he starts a formal prayer. And as I argue, the meaning is completely different. But this ayah is so important that I wanted us to start today with this ayah of the Quran. God says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا وإن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا سعيدا طيبا فامسحوا بوجوهكم وأيديكم منه ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج ولكن يريد ليطهركم وليتم نعمته عليكم لعلكم تشكرون. All you who have believed, maintain peace. If you decide to fix, strengthen, renew your salah, your two-way connections with Allah and others, then purify, wash out all distracting intentions in order to truly focus, and your helpers so they become your ardent supporters, and cleanse your leadership and those working under them so both parties can reach their full potential. And if you have been sidelined from Allah's instructions, then wash out those impurities from your inner cores. If you haven't found Allah's cleansing water yet, and you've been mentally weakened, or you've been traveling the path of Allah, or you've come from a lowly place or been investigating, or you've been involved with diversionary things, then make the noble resolve to rise. And then with that noble resolve, wipe away the dirt from your focuses in your inner cores. Such an amazing ayah. Such an awesome message, such a universal, uplifting message, something that we all know as part of our fitrah, as part of our bringing, what we should, what we shouldn't do. Quran reminds us to do exactly that. And I'm hoping that this ayah will set our path right for the rest of this duration. So first section for today is the overview of the project. So for those who don't know, and this is a question that has come up quite a few times, as in some people pop into one video or the other, maybe you guys have been sharing links to others. So maybe someone has found a particular video say on the masjid useful and they posted up on the Facebook page or on a WhatsApp chat or Telegram or whatever, and the person lands onto that one video out of sequence, and they always ask, well, I don't understand the sequence. I don't understand the context. So this is a reminder. There is on the channel a playlist called Salat in the Quran. And in the very beginning, you'll find the prefix English as well. And all of the videos of this series are in there in a sequential order, starting from number 1, which started 4 months ago, up until today's video. So you'll find every single one in there. So on the screenshot up in the screen, is basically just a reminder for those who are not aware as to how to make their way towards the series. This series, Salat in the Quran, started 4 months ago. November 22nd last year, to be precise, was when this video came up. The first video of the series came out in English. There's the same series running in parallel in Urdu as well, but the English series is obviously what I'm talking about. Today's video, including today's video, we have 13 videos in the series. The total length, not including today's video, is about 5 hours, 300 minutes. I tried doing some calculations on how much time it took me to do the research, do the prep, the time it takes to record the videos and edit, and all the comments and email comms, etc. came out. I couldn't count them. So that is a whole chunk of time that I cannot account for, that obviously went beyond and around and over this whole project that you don't see. That's part of the iceberg that's obviously hidden away. About 100 ayat of the Quran to do with Salah and the relevant terms. We looked at them throughout this series. The key gist of them, which we can talk about after this section, is that we ended up with 29 propositions. So this is my way of understanding things. I form hypotheses. I try to be as objective and unbiased as possible. And then once I have an hypothesis, the only way to really see this holds is to apply this to a text or closed system like the Quran is and see if that holds. And that is what has been achieved, I would like to say, throughout the series. So the gist of all of that work was 29 propositions that I've been covering throughout the videos as we've gone through. Those 29 I will be summarizing today. So those 29 are the framework upon which this whole, upon which the claim rests that the Quran does not have any physical prayer. There's no ritualistic worship, act of devotion to be found at all in the Quran. These propositions power that, and these are the ones that I will be talking about and summarizing. To give a very short introduction, maybe, or reminder of the terms that we cover throughout these videos, because I think they're very important terms. These terms come up all the time. Anytime you wish to engage with the Quran and want to talk about some of the terms that come up in those discussions, or even the arguments that people make, there has to be, and there is this physical prayer because this term or this ayah means so and so. So I've tried covering all of those terms, and those terms are listed out here. I'll just mention them. I won't go delve into them deeper because obviously if anybody's interested, they can go watch the videos. The topics that we covered: Duluk al-Shams, Sajda, Ruku', Qasr, Salawat, Salat al-Fajr, Salat al-Isha, Salat al-Wusta, Salat al-Janaza, Masjid, Tarafay al-Nahar, Kitaban Mawqutan, Wudu', Aqimus Salah, Durud, or as we say, Salah al-Ibrahimiyya, or Salah ala al-Nabi, Maqam Ibrahim, Musalla, Adhan, Tahajjud, Dhikr, al-Masjid al-Haram. So all of these terms, if any one of these is something that you have been thinking about, I'm not saying what I offered was 100% correct, and I'll talk about this more. What I'm saying is these are terms that I've talked about. So if you were interested, or if you were to even critique what I've talked about, I would really highly encourage you to go and look up those terms the way I've talked and understood them and talked about them, and use that as a starting position to either argue or ask questions or engage with me. Having a quick look at the comments before I go on to the next page. Einman, Muhammad Hussein, I can't say, Mamoon, I think, Fiti Maldives, Fayaz, Obescott, Chandragari, Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Chandragari, you've made an interesting point, and I know exactly where you're coming from. It's something I like to talk about as time goes on. So we shall proceed. And this is the second section of today's conversation. So the first section was just laying out, giving a very brief introduction of the whole project, the whole enterprise, so to speak, and where we are and what we covered. This is the meat and bones of this whole thing, of this whole enterprise. This is what we ended up with. These propositions, quite a few of them we ended up with, they are what I think Quranic Salah is all about. So let's go through them all together. Number one, As-Salah. As-Salah is a two-way connection between entities. 2. As-Salah is an abstract noun. It lacks a specific form or a ritualistic aspect. 3. Entities do As-Salah for different reasons / objectives. 4. When entities do as-salah correctly, it stops fahsha and munkar. Number 5. This is the ayah that we covered in the very beginning of this video. Ayah 5.6 does not talk about any ritual cleansing, wudu, required before a ritual prayer. 6. Ruku' is acceptance, submission to Allah's system. 7. Sajda is to obey, implement the system, rules of Allah. 8. Masjid is a place, state, occasion where orders are carried out by those who are doing the sajda. 9. Al-Masjid al-Haram is the masjid where Allah's outlawed things are kept haram. 10. To aqimu something is to restore, reconnect, straighten, fix, integrate, maintain. 11. Aqimu as-salah is to restore, reconnect, straighten, fix, integrate, maintain the two-way connections between entities. 12. To do salla ala is the action of an entity forming a salah, two-way connections, with another entity. 13. When an entity starts performing a salah, their particular application, interpretation, form becomes their salah. 14. Qasr of the as-salah means to temporarily limit, modify one's duty of forming, strengthening two-way connections. 15. The Quran does not talk about any ritualistic prayers during battles. 16. Kitaban mawqutan refers to the situational, circumstance-based duty of as-salah for the peacemakers. 17. As-salah has objectives and requires careful execution. 19. Tahajjud means to remain vigilant during the period of darkness and confusion. 20. Salat al-Fajr is done at, for, the beginning of a program to spread the nur, light of Allah's message. 21. Salat al-Isha is done when a particular program of work to spread the nur, light of Allah's message is winding down at a hiatus. 22. Salawat are tangible obligations, manifestations that result from as-salah, forming positive mutual connections. 23. As-salat al-wusta is the best form of as-salah because it is moderate and it unites. 24. In the Quran, maqam, not muqam. Maqam means a non-physical station, position. 25. Musalla is a way of doing as-salah based on, derived from Ibrahim's non-physical station. 26. There is no ritual Friday salah in the Quran. 27. The Quran has no adhan as a ritual calling for ritual prayers. 28. Islam has no ritual prayer for the dead. 29. Any ritual prayer, istikhara, for rain, for tarawih, Eid, etc., not mentioned by the Quran, isn't part of Allah's deen. To ask a rhetorical question, because why not? Where is the physical namaz or prayer in here? Before I continue, this was quite a long list that I ended up with throughout the series. I'll have a quick look at the comments and I'll go on to the next section. So we have got, I've talked about Chandagari. Assalamu alaikum to Brother Hamza Yusuf. Brother Hamza, I can see you in the comments. Only the truth matters. Salam. Abdul Alim, how can I get this document? Well, it will be here. This document, when I say document, these slides are on, well, they'll be on the channel. So if you ever wish to come back and refer to them, all you have to do is to, just rewind and you'll find them. But if there is interest, maybe put in the comments and we can figure out a way to get them sent out to you as well. And salam to you as well, Mahmoud Ahmad Khan. So we will, we've got Harry Potter as well. Harry Potter in the comments, who instead of doing a Assalamu alaikum is doing a Salman alaikum, or salmon, depending on how you pronounce it. So sorry, Harry, it just it distracted me for a minute in the seconds in the chat. We shall continue. So this section here is the frequently asked questions. So these are all the questions that just kept coming up. They just would not die. So no matter what the topic would be or what we would be talking about, we'll be talking about Maqam Ibrahim, and a similar question will pop up. What about this? What about that? Or all those other variations thereof. So this is the section where I I think I've captured all of the sticky questions that people have, they want to ask, or people wonder, or people counter with. And I've put them in here, and I like them, and I like to talk about them, so they don't get ignored, they don't just get discouraged, we don't just move on, but we acknowledge that there are people who have legitimate questions, counterpoints, arguments, point discussion, and that we should be willing to and strong enough in our understanding to be able to acknowledge them and basically have a counterpoint for them. I'll just have a quick sip of time. All right, so let's continue. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this section, as in look at all of the questions that came up throughout the series, I have to acknowledge, and I want to acknowledge, and I want this to be crystal clear, what I'm going to talk about coming forwards is not based on the Quran. And you'll see this by the nature of the questions that I'm going to be trying to answer. So the reason I did not want to cover those questions, those frequently asked questions, is they had nothing to do with the Quran. But as I said, I don't think it's fair to ignore them. Hence, they are in the summary video, and I'll talk about them. Also, I like to mention, because this has come up, I am no fan of conspiracy theories. I don't buy, I don't understand, I don't accept Freemasonry or the world being flat or this and that, or mass the mass hypnotism happening, or mass hallucinations happening, etc., that end up, or mass cover-ups of history. I don't buy that. So again, you'll see this come up as I talk about those questions. I'm kind of laying on a little bit of a framework so you understand where I'm coming from when I do talk about them. Now, the next one I'd like to make. I am not an expert. I would like to reiterate that. I'm not an academic expert on things like Arabian history, the hadith, riwayat, fiqh, these projects that have been perfect in the Bani Abbasi era, Oriental studies, archaeologies. I'm reasonably educated. I can talk. I can hold my own. I can even argue if I had to or wanted to until cows come, until cows come home. But I'm not an expert in them. And this is also a reason I've tried not to engage in them, because A, they distract from the mission of that channel, from the Quran, but B, I don't feel myself, maybe it's part of my nature being an academic. If I'm not certain on something, I'd much rather not talk about it. So I want you to keep this in mind as I go on to the next few questions that'll come up. Another point we should remember, always remember, anybody who talks about history, now this is a non-religious question, this is common sense, this is scientific knowledge, this is academic understanding right now. Any talk of history is dhanni, is best approximation of reality, as in what could have happened, what might have happened, what is more than feasible as to what we see today. This is not qadri, this is not absolute, this is not 100% isomorphic. We have no way of corroborating anybody's claims. We just don't have it. No matter what artifacts we end up with, we in the end are building a lattice work of hypotheses and guesses, educated guesses, and we end up with, over time, an increasing probability of getting towards the truth, but that is not the truth. This is a simple fact. So again, I'm mentioning this because a lot of times we see, especially in the mainstream circle, where we find history, because all of these riwayat and history and tarikh and even books of fiqh, even the books of qira'ah, they're all nothing but the artifacts of their time, the historical, even if you take them at face value, that these are actual things, they're nothing but records of history that are biased, were biased the moment they were written and published and passed on, but even they were incomplete by the time they were written. So what I'm saying is we should be very careful of making sweeping statements either which way based upon what we have, and whilst forgetting that these things will be, are, and forever will be dhanni. The example that I quite often like to give is, for those who understand liberal Pakistan, the guy who we call the founder of Pakistan, a guy called Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he was in our era. He died last century. Even now, we don't know what were his last words. We got 3 different contradictory variations of what his last words were as he was on his deathbed or as he was being transported on an ambulance. We still don't know. We don't know things about our own time, much less the time that passed before. With all of those disclaimers, I will answer now those frequently asked questions that kept coming up to the best of my ability knowledge. But once more, I claim no authority for those domains. And I will point you towards expert if you were interested. Look at the comments. So Waqar Ali, brother, you've just joined the video right now, I suspect. If you wish to talk about the Jummah prayer or what it is, there's a playlist. Guess what? There's a whole playlist. If you go to the playlist, you will find a video called specifically Salat Friday prayers. Have a watch for it. There's in the comments, Chacha, Wasim, Assalamu alaikum to you as well. I recognize you from the comments. You have come up quite a few times. And Ali AK, do you consider a salah to mean the bind, and that we are to establish the bind by reading the Quran at the end of the day? I'll talk about this. I'll talk about your question, because this is a frequently asked question that comes up all the time. So I'm not ignoring you, but I will talk about it as part of the questions that has been posed. So this is the first question, the most fundamental question, the question that comes up all the time, and I think we should not shirk away from it. The question is very simple. There in front of us is this thing, this phenomenon called the physical salah, that people call this physical prayer, this act of devotion that people have been doing, passing on from generation to generation. Where did that come from? Where did the physical prayer come from? I think it's a fair question. However, it's a very flawed question as well. Why? Because the question assumes that all of its assumptions are correct. But in reality, I'm looking on the left-hand side for those who are following in, the underlying assumption is incorrect. We assume in that question that there is a physical salah, and we consider that to be Islamic, and then we say whatever we say. The problem is in the assumption that the physical prayer is something that Islam talks about, or Islam recommends, or Islam encourages, or Islam enforces, or Islam has got regulations for. That is a flawed question. The real question is not where did the physical salah come from. The real question is where and how did the cultural ritualistic practice of devotional worship become associated with the concept of Quranic salah. What is the Quranic salah? If you're watching the videos or if you need a reminder, please start from the very beginning. But keeping that in mind, keeping the Quranic view of the salah, which is not physical, as I've established, the question that we need to be looking at answering is, we have a cultural, let's take the terms right, a cultural practice. We have a ritualistic devotional thing, something that has been passed on generation to generation. Where did that practice, how did that become associated with the Quran? That is the question. I would also like to basically reiterate this point, because this is something that's, that we have to admit. The devotional prayer, this namaz, is mass practiced. Let's not beat about the bush here. And also against what the traditional camp might want themselves to believe or pass on. No, this is not passed on by hadith either. Hadiths don't talk about it. The Quran does not talk about it. If you wanted to set up the number of prayers, the rak'ah, and the movements within, you have to patch it together through hadith, and even then you won't be complete. It won't be a complete picture. So what we have, let's be very clear, what we have, what we see around us, is not from the Quran, it's not from the hadith. This is something passed from generation to generation. It's a cultural inheritance that we have. We can't ignore it. We can't deny it. We can't walk away from it. And if we did and we said, no, this is just made up, or this is just false, or anything, I think then we deny everything about human history. So here I'm talking to those brothers and sisters of mine who want to have the Quran reign supreme, who wish to not let anything cloud over what the Quran says, and they sometimes are quite happy to just wave this physical prayer away. And I said, this is wrong. We cannot ignore this physical presence among us. There is this physical prayer. We can't deny it. And if we do, as I said before, we don't know anything about anybody's history. But human civilization and everything that we've ever known is basically useless. Might as well throw it away. We know nothing about anybody who's ever lived, who's ever passed, whatever they've done. Let's just start living in the present. Let's all just, we'll move on. Also, the thing we should not forget is that this cultural practice, just a quick one. Brother Alim is saying that I'm frozen. Can you guys all hear me okay? If somebody in the comments can mention whether my voice is coming up fine, or is just for one person who can't hear me fine. Just waiting for the comments. the meantime, I will also strength 5. Little bit breaking, but okay. Well, that is strange. Okay. Now, okay. All right. I will continue. But if it breaks, please, yeah, let me know. I don't think it should break. I've got pretty good internet. If this is not working, I'd be very surprised. Also, we'll continue. Come on to the last point of this slide. And thanks for Hamza and Mahmoud and Ishaq and everybody for confirming. I think we have to be honest. What we see here, this physical prayer, it is universal. Let's not beat about the bush. No matter whether you are from the Sunnah or the Sunni tradition, whether you're Shia, you're from Ibadiyya, or from a Khawarij, all of these sects, these very early sects, every single one of them has had this physical prayer that they've been doing over over centuries. Everybody, no matter how much they hated each other, how much they killed each other, one thing that they all agreed on, this is this physical thing we have to do. I'm saying this so we're being reasonable. I'm saying this so we're being honest to ourselves. I say this so we're not just turning away from inconvenient truths. We're not making a mockery of what we believe based upon the Quran. Having said that, there are a lot of problems with the traditional narrative. A lot of problems. There's a lot of hand-waving, magic wizardry happening on the other side as well that would make you believe that what they have is beyond reproach. As I will talk about, this is not quite true. So let's continue on to the second slide. This is an important question that I've got on the top left. Does mass practice of a cultural rite, does that make it right? Does that make it valid? Is that proof for its validity? No. Just because a lot of people, or the whole society, or the overwhelming consensus of a society over time, of a period, of a group of people, ends up coalescing around something, does that make it right? The answer to that, no matter who you ask, should be no. And we see this, we have known about it, we see this in non-religious things as well. In our own lifetime, in my particular experience, the rise of Trump and his continued sway, just because a lot of people, and I've continued to be amazed by this, they agree with him, they support him, that doesn't make it right. Even if that number became from 46, 47% of America to 99% of America, that does not make that right. So just because all of America believes something does not make it right. This is common sense. Hitler and what he did to the German society, they all ended up through direct participation or indirectly parts of the Nazi machine. Did that make it right? No. The witch hunts to start it up in Europe. And within our own generation, the massive pace at which LGBTQ agenda has been normalized and has gained mainstream acceptance, even when it's being pushed down at pretty much every part of our lives here, does that make it right? I don't think so. So this is an argument against those who would say, oh, this, by appealing to history or tradition, that this is right or this is correct. No, this is not true. And we've got evidence by looking at things around us to support the claim that just because everybody has been doing something does not make it right. I'm not going to offend, but I'm just, as an example, offering, let's say in my neighboring country, India, the vast majority of the populace believes the cows are sacred. Does that make it so? You would disagree with that. So just because a group of people decided to make something religious, a practice that they started passing out, does not make it so. Another question that comes up all the time, and is part of this whole theme, or people try and offer suggestions. Oh, this physical prayer that we have today, yes, it is here, but it was invented by the Bani Abbas. The Abbasids invented it, or the Persians did it, the Zoroastrians did it. I don't think so. That's true. With respect to all of them, that is not true. The practice that we see today preceded them, preceded the Abbasid dynasty. It preceded the influx and the rise of the Persians. And again, this is where I said, if you want more, you should go and look at those secondary sources that are primary here, or to the scholarship that deals with these matters. But if you even read Imam Malik or look at other glimpses of history that we get, these things were happening. They were not just invented in a certain time and then forced to spread throughout the world. People, we have to remember, Islam spread fast. We have got archaeological references and archaeological evidence of masajid being found in China all the way to Africa, to Maghreb, to Morocco. Islam spread. It's impossible It's impossible for one dynasty sitting in one place of the Muslim world to convince everybody, mass hallucinate them into starting something up and saying, this is what you have to do. So I don't think this is true, that this was started 150, 200 years after the death of the Prophet. How did it start then? I'll talk about it, but I'm just wanting us to be honest. I'm just wanting us to be clear and not just hand wave inconvenient facts. Just a quick question, guys. If you can still confirm if my voice is fine, because I think I've got another comment there saying that my voice is still breaking up here and then. So you guys can confirm, that would be awesome. Also, the claim that is made quite often is that, well, what we have today, this physical prayer, it wasn't invented by the Persians or the Abbasid dynasty, but it was borrowed either by the Jews or from the Zoroastrians. So the argument is made that even today, the Jews, when they pray, you should watch those videos on YouTube, they're very similar to how Muslims pray. In fact, the Jews are allowed to pray in a Muslim's mosque versus a Christian temple, a Christian church, which is quite an interesting thing in its own right. Also, there are striking resemblances between what Zoroastrians used to do, still do, and what we do. 5 prayers, 5 prayers. Anybody who's interested, anybody who's done some research, you know how common those things are. So argument is made that what we have, not by God, but is just borrowed from the Zoroastrians and the Jews. Answer for me, based on all that I've researched, all that I've pondered so far on this question, is I don't think we can ever know for sure. For all we know, these physical movements could have been part of the overall shared culture of that area, of that part of the world. Everybody used to dress in a similar way. They all used to have kings and tribes. They had practices that followed from one part to the other. So I found it very surprising to hold to the claim that, again, this has been borrowed, or the origins for that lie in Zoroastrianism or Judaism. What I would say is more than likely is that there's this proto form of the worship that has been around in the area for a long time, and that proto worship and its form, the devotional aspect and rites that go with it, some of those were taken by the Zoroastrians, some of them were taken by the Jews, and again there was two-way interactions and part of the dialectics that happened that ended up obviously having that as a cultural practice continue to grow. Same thing happened to the Arabs. I don't find that shocking at all. This is how cultures and cultural practices arise. You start something up, you impress your neighbors, but there's interactions from them, and over time culture evolves. A cultural practice evolved, and if 3 countries, 4 countries, the whole region ended up doing things in common, that does not mean that one was the originator, more that this was a shared tapestry that they were all borrowing from, that they were all part of. So again, the question is, well, where did it come from, right? So this is, I guess, what people keep asking me. People have kept on asking me, and I can see there was this comment up in the beginning, not in the beginning, just a few minutes before as well, that the Prophet was praying, wasn't he? I'll talk about that as well. Let's go to the third part, our third page of this question. Another argument that's made up is, well, the clergy just made up the physical prayer. The clergymen, the Shafi'ite project, Ahmad bin Hanbal, or after the death of Imam Abu Hanifa, his followers, and all of those conspired and ended up giving us this physical prayer. Let's have a reminder first. Considering the proposition that we have raised so far in the previous videos, physical worship is not mandated by the Quran. But let's continue back to the question. Did the clergy do it? Once more, this practice goes across beyond the sects that we have. Ahl Sunnah still hate the Shia. The Shia hate the Sunnah. Al-Khawarij are hated by everybody. They all do this physical prayer. To say that all of them were in cahoots, the clergymen, and they were all conspiring, collaborating to come up with this elaborate ritual, I think is just walking away from the question. So I don't think, and I'm referring you to the primary sources and scholars of this area. Anybody who's worked, who's a serious student, not biased sources who are sitting in their little own silos. If you can find scholars of Tariq, Riwayat, Ahadith, Oriental research, modern Muslim scholarship, archaeology, etc., please refer to them. There's a whole body of academic scholarship out there that I want you to refer to, and not me. But based upon what I understood from their experience, from their perspectives, The bodily movements, the number of times per day, all these rituals, not invented by the clergy, not invented by the kings. What they did do, though, and this is a point of nuance that I think we shouldn't forget about. What has been done, and what we find evidence for even in the so-called Islamic literature that we have, or the history that we have, is that this practice, this existing physical practice, a ritualistic-based form of devotional worship, was ratified and sanctioned by the clergy. There is no denial of that. There's no denial. There was an existing practice. There was practice being done widely before these splits in Islam even began or sprouted. But these movements, this action, was given the weight, the legitimacy of religious men as part of having themselves cemented in this whole new equation that was being created. And I'll give you an example of how these things happen. Anybody who's interested, and this is a question that's come up, Isra and Mi'raj, this fantastic story of Rasul Muhammad in the nighttime being taken from here to Masjid al-Aqsa, which apparently they say is in Jerusalem, Al-Quds, where there was no mosque, and then whether it's a donkey he's going on or some other animal special, and then he's going up, flying. Well, again, debates whether it's physical or a spiritual journey. It's going up to the heavens, 1 to the 7th level, and the different prophets, and then this whole scene, this fantastic scene where he meets Musa, my namesake. Obviously, this is my pseudonym, but he meets the real Musa, and this chat, or go negotiate with Allah, get down from 50 number of prayers down to 5, down to 3, down to, and every time. This whole scene, if you're interested how these things evolve, there's a lot of academic work on how the story evolved. Let me repeat that. How the story evolved. Isra and Mi'raj, if we were to look at the earliest records, the earliest literature that we can get our hands on about these stories, whether it's 1 or 2, again, this debate, it was simple. It wasn't as embellished. There weren't as many characters. There weren't as many details. It wasn't as fanciful. But every generation by generation, somehow the later people know more than the previous people. What does that tell you? What that tells you is that we have got a class of people who find value in embellishment, in expanding the scope, in making things interesting, or gaining legitimacy. And thus, generation after generation, we find more things being added to this fantastically amazing thing that they ascribe to the Prophet Muhammad. By the way, so let me just say this and I'll move on. The earlier people who should know more knew less than the people who came after. That is not how things work. Also, there's a typo there in the slide. Also, there's a big chink in the traditional armor. They might tell you that, there's unanimity of physical prayer. I acknowledge this as well. But what they don't tell you, what they don't acknowledge, with their hand wavered away, is there are significant differences even in this physical act. Significant differences. For example, just to give very few examples, combining physical prayers. There's still debate. Ask Sunnah or Shia. Rafa'i Yadain, a huge topic in Pakistan. I don't know if the other parts of the world. People continue to talk about whether you should raise your hands, when to raise, and how to raise them. Now, these concerns, these conflicts are whitewashed today, but these were major issues. A lot of these issues were major. Whole sects were being formed based upon how one party diverged from the other in terms of these minutiae, in terms of these details. This is huge. We've got sects because of that, which are telling you that when cultural practices diverge, or they've got different competing factors or things that are influencing it, things continue to, take their own shape, their own path. And this is normal. This is expected. This is what you'd expect to find. Also, number of how many rak'ah you must do. Now, fard, they all agree on, but how many tarawih? How many of us know people going out in tarawih today? How many rak'ah is it? Ask the Shia. There's none. There's 0. Umar, the second alleged Khalifa, he is the one who invented it. Gone, bid'ah, not accepted, right? Don't we know that? But then again, we've got discussions and debates on, is it the number 20? Is it 8? How many should you pray? And this is just an example that there are these lingering problems that can't just be hand waved away. What should be read during the prayer? This bit, I don't think gets talked about much. For those who are interested in this, I would encourage you to go delve deeper. There are a lot of debates on what you should read in the quiet parts of the prayer. During Dhuhr and Asr, well, how do you go explicitly against the Quranic ayah, which says, even by your understanding, that when you speak, when you do the namaz, the ritual prayer, your voice must neither be too loud nor too low. It should be medium. Well, why aren't you doing anything when you're doing Dhuhr or Asr? You stand behind the Imam, whatever he's doing, you have no idea. You as a muqtadi, at least if you're from Imam Abu Hanifa's camp of school, aren't even moving your lips. You're just standing there, literally standing. What happened there? And the most important question in this unspoken part of the prayer, what are you saying when you're sitting down? For God's sake, all those shirkiya jumal, all those shirkiya sentences, you are saying your salam to a man long dead, a great man, Rasul Muhammad, a great man. We would never be, I would never be equal, I would never be worthy of guarding his tent, nothing. But he passed away, he died, he was a bashar, he was a man. Why are you saying salam to him when you're doing your prayer with Allah? Allah is alive, He's Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, He's always there. You're there to do your namaz, your physical prayer with Allah. Why are you calling and doing your salams to a man who has passed away? What sense does it make? Why are you asking blessings for his family? What has his family done? Are you a Muslim who believes in equality, only difference in terms of in front of Allah being taqwa? Or are you giving credence and priority to the family of a person just because they happen to have been born, or they've got blue blood, they're royals? This is not Islam. Again, Bani Israel, we take this to Nabi Ibrahim, we're again asking for Nabi Ibrahim. All of these things, think about them. And there's a lot of debate on that. So we see real distinctions, real problems, even in this physical narrative, this traditional narrative, the deeper we delve. Outwardly, all of us, we do praise. You go deeper. Yeah, but, and those asterisks and that fine print, it just continues to get murky and murky. So where does physical prayer come from? This is my understanding, yeah, and this is what I set up in the very beginning. This is based on all that I've read throughout my years on pondering on the same questions. I am no authority. I'm answering this because I was asked this question. Am I right in these questions, especially in terms of these questions? I don't know. I'm giving you a reasonable answer based upon what I know, trying to be as unbiased as I can be. But if you need to go refer to primary sources. This is not a Quranic topic. Yeah, as at the very beginning I said, how did this physical, not salah, this physical practice start? It's not a question of the Quran. This is not a question of Islam. This is an anthropological question. This is a question of history. For how, let's pick an example. Why the Aboriginals of Australia why do they revere a certain mountain? Who do you ask? Religious people or people who look at the culture, the tradition of that part of the world? You go and ask through the experts of history, and not anybody else. So for me, from what I understand, it's absolutely not the Quranic salah. But we have to acknowledge, just to reiterate, that the physical devotional prayer would have been in vogue early enough in Islam that it spread without question to all sects, denominations, splinter groups. This is how it happened. This is why we see it. So I think this is a reasonable argument that I'm putting forward. I don't think that based on human tradition passed down generation and supported by all the literature we can grab from that era, that the formal ritual prayer was either invented by the Persians or borrowed from Zoroastrians, whole line and sinker, or forced by the Abbasid dynasty of the kings or clergy or whatever groupings that they had of their time. What did happen? And this bit is without doubt what we see in front of us. A hijacking took place. A hijacking in broad daylight. We had an expert forgery, a fantastic job. I must give credit where credit's due. An act of great courage happened where Quranic concepts were hijacked. That hijacking transformed the Quranic salah, completely a different thing, to a formalized ritual prayer perfected in the 9th, 10th century? If this is not the real question, then I don't know what other questions we should be looking at. So again, the question isn't, how did the physical salah come from if you say there's no salah in the Quran? The real question is, the Quranic salah is not physical. Why have we been calling a cultural practice? Why have we been isomorphing it to the Quranic salah? How did that start? For anybody interested in that, there is plenty of literature, how the fiqh factories where people, the faqih needed, well, they need to be busy. The whole cottage industry of hadith, building, minting, had to be busy. They were running on full speed or full steam. How the ikhbariyin, how those reporters of that time, the TikTok writers, Facebook reporters, how they were busy collecting, making up stories to curry favor with this king or that despot, and etc., etc. There's a whole host of literature. You should go and investigate and read and see how all of that happened. We find this throughout the Quran, by the way. This is not just the Salah. So for those who have not been watching the channel before, and those who speak Urdu or Hindi, the whole channel is full of terms, Quranic terms, that mean nothing, that don't correspond to what we see today. I didn't talk about some of the other terms that people associate with Salah, such as tasbih, for example, or hamd, or tasbih, for example, has got nothing to do with, like a Hindu or like a Christian monk sitting in the corner with a prayer bead that you go one after the other, basically not even thinking about what you're doing. This is not the Quranic tasbih. But if I was to say tasbih, what would you picture in your mind? That is the question. When I say tasbih, and I mean something different based on the Quran, why do you not think of that? Why do you think of this physical artifact that's been, you can go into your close nearby Islamic shop and buy it for $2 made in China? Where did that come from? How did that happen? That is a real question. And before I go on to the next question, I've got, I think from memory, 6-7 of these questions. I'll have a quick look at the comments. There were quite a few that had come in. So where did I start? Yep, I can see with Hamza's comment. Electra Khan, thank you. I'm assuming my voice is correct. Chandar Gari is saying Bukhari had to write the book of Salah. If you read the book of Salah, you cannot piece together the Salah, the physical prayer. I say Salah, even I say Salah. This is so hard. It's so hard to focus on the Quran or use Quranic terms. We have been, especially curse of those like me who are born Muslims, because we continue to think wrongly. When you say, Brother Chandagari, Bukhari had to write the book of Salah, whatever he wrote about the physical practice, even that is not enough for anybody to piece together or construct the artifact, the ritual that we know today. It just wasn't there. You just won't find it. Oh, okay, I see your question. Yes, so wasn't there any practicing Muslims at the time of Bukhari? Yeah, that's a good point. Why did Bukhari have to talk about Salah as physical prayer if there were Muslims around him doing it already? There are, for those who are interested, Imam Malik. I think he's a fascinating character. If I had more time, if I had more inclination towards those areas, I'd like to investigate him more. Why did Imam Malik, such an important figure of traditional Islam, why did he not ever attend Friday prayers? Why was he a recluse? Why did he not even attend these janazah prayers? Was he even a Muslim to begin with? Why did he or people around him, the people of Medina, why did they find problems with changes in Salah that he is capturing, the people of their time is capturing? These are very interesting, intriguing points of inquiry that anybody interested should go and pursue. As I keep reminding, I had to answer these questions from my perspective, but I continue to hold that you should go and talk to the experts in that area. And when I say experts, I don't mean clergymen. I don't mean people sitting in their silos and their avatars. I mean scholars. Let's be unbiased. Let's be honest when we go and talk about things. Whether Jamal Khan is saying Quran talks about prayers. Well, I don't think you've seen the series, brother. So go start from the very beginning. Suhana Malik, Assalamu alaikum to you. Labrick, I can see you've got a few comments in there. If you did physical prayer. Okay, Brother Labrick is making a point by appealing to the Torah and the Gospel. Not my topic for today, but let me just show you this one thing, brother or sister Labrick. The Quranic characters, Musa or Isa, Shu'aib, they have got nothing, Yusuf, they've got nothing to do with the biblical correspondent, the biblical counterparts. Lut of the Quran is not at all what we find in the other scripture. Quran's Lut is not the biblical Lot. Yes, they share a name. We think they're the same people. Their actions are not the same. Isa of the Quran is not the same. Musa of the Quran is not the same. Beyond the superficial things that we find in common, there's a lot of deep, significant differences. So if you wish to take a physical prayer based upon what you find in the Torah, that's your choice. I don't find that approach at all justifiable. And there is a comment by Allah Knows Best. They're calling me, he or she is calling me an uncle. Thank you. I'm probably not old enough. This is for those who are, I'll bring it up just so people can see. Maybe I should do this as I go on. I'm not old enough, I think, to be called an uncle. For those who don't know, this is part of the Pakistani Indian culture where we call people who are older than us uncles or aunties. I have talked about Rijal and Nisa if you speak Urdu. So if you do speak, which I'm assuming you do, you should go watch those videos where I believe, I firmly believe the Quran does not talk to men. Quran does not talk to women. Quran talks to the nafs. And the nafs of the human is neither man nor a female. When I say insan, it's neither man, it's neither female. Quran talks to the nafs. Rijal are men and women. Nisa are men and women. Again, I've talked about this a little bit in the second video of the series about the wudu. How lamastumun nisa does not mean you've touched the women. That is not how the Quran talks about them. Assalamu alaikum to Muhammad Kamil. Just going on, there's a comment from Harry Potter. Indeed, if I think your comment came in as I was talking about the searching part. If you say Assalamu alaikum ya ayyuhan nabi, was the Prophet saying this to himself? That just makes no sense. Now again, they would argue against it. No, he would not say this, but then you're not following his salah, are you? I am just continuing on with the questions. Brother Iron Man has got a few Quranic ayat. This question, Salah ala Nabi, I have talked about this in the series. Please go watch the series. All right, okay, I will go on to the next question. And by the way, if I miss any of the questions that are coming up, if I don't see them, maybe just repost them. If they're relevant to the question or the slide we're talking about, I will talk about them. I will not. Well, this is the intent. The reason I'm doing it live is so we can wrap it up. I don't want to talk about this topic again for good reason. So yeah, let's get that out of the way today. Second question, again, came up today, came up all the time. Question, did Nabi Muhammad do namaz or physical prayer? Did he do this? Let's have a look at this, yeah? But before we do that, let's get our terms right. Nabi Muhammad did do the Quranic Salah. He had this Risala. In his Risala, he was commanded to follow that Risala and judge by it. He did the Quranic Salah. Let's not extrapolate this to the ritual 5 times a day formal prayer. Quranic Salah, one thing. Ritual prayer, something different. Nabi Muhammad did one, does not necessarily mean he did the other. We have to be very clear, we're not mixing up the things. As a Rasul, Nabi Muhammad, as a Rasul, he was tasked with the balagh, spread of the Risala. Let's remember that. Quran was the only message he had. He had nothing else. He was the messenger of the divine. This is not a minor station. This is something that we should aspire. Well, no matter what we do, we will never get to that point. But this is his huge station. This is what he was. He had the Risala from the divine, the one that he dealt with, the one he engaged with, the one he judged with. So having kept those, I'd like us to remember these 2 points. Let's go on. In Nabi Muhammad's time, let's be honest, yeah? Let's not kid ourselves. They did not have TV. They did not have Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, live streams like this, or Kindle, or the mass publishing press to spread the message of the Quran. They did not have that. We also have to remember that as Nabi, Muhammad bin Abdullah was also a leader of his community. So he was a Rasul, given the Risala that he had to spread. He was a Nabi, he also had to judge for his company. I think, if I'm being very honest, and I think we should all agree, this is a reasonable contention. It stands to reason that Rasul Muhammad would gather people around him in a central place, the masjid, to spread the Quran, the text words, and as Nabi, carry out decisions based on the Quran to do with issues of his age in the masjid, where the sajda to Allah was not a ritual thing only or primarily, but also the promulgation of laws of Allah that he as Nabi was meant to enforce in the society he was responsible for. So was he, what he had to spread the Quran, he had to judge on it. So yes, I don't think there's any problems in us accepting this contention, this argument, this proposition, that he would have places to do precisely both of those two actions. What times would Nabi Muhammad have gathered people then, right? Now, this is why I think the answer to this question, I think, answers a fundamental question I raised in the beginning. And the question was, why do we say that Allah forgot people outside of the Arabian Peninsula, or people from India, Pakistan, and some parts of Europe and America? Why did Allah forget people in Norway? Why did Allah forget people who are very close, maybe who are living on the Arctic Circle, or people who go to space? How are they to pray? The sun is out for 6 months. The sun is, it just doesn't work. Space, there is no concept. So is Allah forgetting? Is a terrible theologian, we want to say. But then we have got these human people who continue to patch up his religion and say, that's fine. If you're in Ramadan, but you're living in Norway, that's fine. You don't have to follow your 6 month, the 20-hour day. Just break your fast or keep your prayers in accordance with what you see in Makkah, etc. This is all patchwork. Let's be honest about it. So what times would Nabi Muhammad have gathered people to spread the Quran, only thing he had, and carry out his injunctions? Well, times that were in keeping with the culture, the biyah of his era. What times would they be? Morning, midday, afternoon sometimes, dusk, evening, special occasions for the society. There's no problem in us accepting that there were times when people gathered around him, and he, as part of his responsibility, made sure that he spread the message that he was given by the divine. Those times corresponded with his era. They had to. He was bound by where he lived. And that is a reason that what he did for those times does not work for countries or peninsula outside of the Arabian Desert, and that it's not universally applicable. So did Nabi Muhammad gather his followers regularly so they could listen to the Quran, carry out his injunctions? I think there's strong evidence to say absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Then the question that comes up after this is, did Rasul Nabi Muhammad, did the physical form of the formal ritual prayer that has physical prostrations and bowing and all the stuff that goes along with it? Answer, I think, is maybe. I don't know. We don't know. We just can't tell for sure. For all I know, and this is, I think, an answer that you will not get authoritatively, honestly, from anybody, he may have adapted the message to the practices, lifestyle, culture of his time. He might have done so as his way of as-salah, forming connections with others. Why do I say his way? For those who have not seen the video where I've talked about the difference between the two spellings of as-salah, this is what I'm referring to here. His way of connecting, his interpretation was or could have been this. So to reiterate, even if that is true, let's grant for the sake of argument that Nabi Muhammad did bow down, do physical prostrations at a number of times per day. Even if that is true, which we cannot confirm at all, neither here nor there, even if that was true, it would have been his application, chosen method, not something ordered, commanded by Allah in the Quran. We should not confuse ourselves. We should not mix things. We should not extrapolate where there's no evidence to do that. We should not do that. Let's continue. Did Nabi Muhammad do the Quranic Salah? Absolutely. I am repeating this because we get our terms wrong. Quranic Salah, Rasul Muhammad, absolutely. Did he carry out a physical form of devotion to the divine? As I said, we cannot be 100% certain. We can't rule it out either. But we can make some counterpoints here to explain how this physical prayer spread out despite all of these splinter groups and all these divisions that we see even in the very earlier Muslims. A counterpoint that I would like to offer is this, that maybe the Nabi Rasul Muhammad never did that. He did not do that. But this practice had to have started within 30 to 40 years of his demise. That is before there was a split of the Sunnah and the Shia and the Ibadiyya, or all of these wars broke up. I call them wars of the caliphs, where the so-called companions, again, I'm not trying to degrade, but this is how message we are asked to take away from these sources of knowledge, Islamic literature, Islamic academic side. These companions were killing each other. They were murdering each other for the rights to become the caliph. One was here, one was there, and they were constantly raiding. They even raided Makkah. They destroyed the Kaaba. And the same guy who ordered that and literally razed the Kaaba, put it down, demolished it, same guy who sent Muhammad bin Qasim over to our parts of the world as well. Muhammad bin Qasim came over to Pakistan through Sindh, where it ended up becoming, well, bringing Islam along with with him. Same guy, same person, major part of these wars of the caliphs, destroying, killing each other, murdering each other. That was not a good time to have lived in. All of that happening within 30 years of his demise. So maybe Nabi Muhammad did not do that, but the practice needed to have started well before that split happened. Also, something we have to remember, and this is something I'm constantly intrigued by, we have no records. We have no written history, no written artifacts, not even receipts or any administration paperwork from the first 30, 40 years of Islamic history. We don't. We have the Quran. We have Quran. It was passed not just by memory, but also passed in writing. So that is something that has survived. Obviously, the Quran was written out as well, but we've got nothing else. All of the history that we have seems to have been wiped. Why? I've got answers, I've got propositions, I've got contentions I could make. Again, I would refer you to people who can answer this better than me as to, during these wars of the caliphs, this game of thrones that were being waged and ran and engaged in at that time, why would a party be interested in wiping whatever they were getting their hands on to legitimize their claims for power? There's a lot that's happening, plus all of those other cultural, religious tensions that were building up. So, counterpoint, to summarize, if Nabi Muhammad did not start it, which we cannot say either which way, then it had to have started very early on, 30 years of his demise, for this to have passed on throughout the Muslim spectrum of thought and practice. Another argument that I think that can be made is behind why, let me start that again. Another argument that can be made to support the claim that Nabi Muhammad did not do these physical prayers is the absence of recorded Friday khutbahs. If Salatul Jum'ah is such an important thing that has to be done every Friday, then the Nabi would have done that hundreds of times throughout his life. We do not find his khutbah, his collection of those khutbahs written out, documented anywhere. And before a traditional person comes up and picks me up on this argument, no, just because some tertiary book that you call sacred refers to a khutbah being made on the day of the Jummah does not mean the Friday khutbah as we understand today. Again, we have to be careful we don't conflate the two terms. The Friday khutbah we know today is not what you will find in passing in some tradition that's not even in the 6 Sunni books of Ahadith that mentions a khutbah, a talk, conversation, having been given on the Yawmul Jum'ah. That those two are not the same. So if Nabi Muhammad was doing those prayers, what happened to all the records of them? Why don't we find them? So I think those 2 points, the last 2 points, could and do give credence to the argument that Nabi Muhammad definitely would have been getting people together to listen to the Quran. The practice is, though, if he did not start, he either allowed to proceed by those who found comfort in them, or that they were started very early on after his death. What happened? I don't know. And to be very honest, if we are to be honest, nobody knows. I have spent quite a bit of time on this question. What happened to those 30, 40 lost years? I don't know. We don't know. All we have is history that's come through to us, shaped by the victors of those very bloody wars that broke out. They were, how do I say this politely? They were savage wars. Even if 10% of that, what we hear, is true, trust me, you would not want to have been part of that. Let's go to the last page of this question. The $1 million question again. Did Nabi Muhammad carry out a physical devotion, namaz, prayer, ordered by Allah? No. He followed the risala, his risala, the only thing he was given. That did not ask him, command him, order him, task him to do a physical prayer, a physical act of devotion. So even if he would have done it, it would not have been ordered by Allah. If he would have seen this being done by people around him and he tolerated it, did not stop them, that would have been his discretion. If people after him, within 30 years of his demise, started to do this and spread this and have this become enshrined, again, not something ordered by Allah. Let's not forget, this is a point that I continue to talk about. Nabi Muhammad as Rasul only followed the Quran. Let's not get out of that. Let's not forget it. In the sake of being fair, lack of evidence is not evidence of absence. Because we cannot find, say, I think one of the brothers in the comments said, because we cannot find the whole prayer written out in the books of Ahadith, or we cannot find the khutbah, all those collections written out, does not necessarily mean that they did not happen. I grant you that point. Let's say 600 years ago, we had a great, what's the term I'm looking for? Not tourist, person who travels, travelogue, tourist. Anyway, let's say a person went into China and he did not talk about the Great Wall. Does not mean the Great Wall wasn't there. It's just that he, for whatever reason, did not talk about it. Maybe he assumed everybody knew about it. I grant you that, yes, there is this possibility. That lack of evidence is not evidence of absence. However, we still have to be, if we are being honest, it is impossible to derive a ritual prayer with all its pomp and rites from the Quran, the source book, that claims itself to be self-sufficient for hidayah and does not refer you to go outside of it for hidayah, does not ask you to do that once. It is self-sufficient. And this is my honest warning to all those in the traditional camp who continue to say, brother, we believe in the Quran. Quran is enough. Quran is perfect. But we need to also consider X, Y, Z, A, B, C, this person, that, etc., etc. Brother, sister, my dear elder, my uncle, my auntie, please be very careful when you say that. If you take this position, the first position that, hey, lack of evidence, not evidence of absence, it must have been there, you are conceding that the only message given to the Rasul, the Quran, the only thing he was to teach, spread, by the perfect divine, was incomplete, lacking, imperfect. You have just made the perfect work by the perfect being imperfect, incomplete, and you are looking at men long dead to complete it. If the book is complete, the hidayah is complete, it is perfect, you cannot add to something that's already perfect. You would only do that if something was imperfect. That is basic logic. Please consider this. Please consider this honestly. Before going to the next question, I will have a quick look at the comments. So there's some talk of, Aisha is saying, physical salah is an effort of making two-way connections. I'll talk about this. I'll talk about this as we go on. I don't think I've missed anything else in the comments. That is, Brother Advisor is saying something about Ibrahim and Maqam Ibrahim Musalla. I've talked about them in the series. Assalamu alaikum to you alive since. And DA, well, this is a good question. I'll talk about this as well, as what verse or what argument could you put in front of people to convince them or show for sure the salat is not, the physical prayer is not a Quranic salah. I'll talk about this as I come, because this is a question that comes up all the time. Let's go on to question number 3. People have asked me throughout, and even today people are asking. I saw a couple of comments go by. People ask, I like doing the physical prayer. I really like it. Can I do it? Or I actually find it spiritually uplifting. I connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I find it spiritually reinvigorating. Can I do it? I think the answer Quranically is very simple. Quran does not give you or does not set a specific way of as-salah with him, connecting with him. It also does not deny a specific way. If you, as an individual, man, woman, whatever age group, if you like the physical prayer and you like its forms. You appreciate the community aspect to it, the routine it gives into your life. Maybe you get calm out of this because you end up focusing, taking time out of your life, whatever the reasons might be, and you wish to do it, there's no problem with that. Quran does not stop you. I don't think it stops you from doing it. I at least didn't find anything that would say to me that you should not do it. That you must stop doing it. You like doing it. You find that comforting for you. Do it. However, let's be very clear. Let's not call the Quranic Salah this physical prayer. This is a way of connecting to Allah, not the way. There's a huge difference in and the, those two little particles. Huge. There's a world of difference. What you like doing and what you are doing is a way that works for you to connect to the divine. This is not the way that he ascribed as a religious obligation in his Risala as part of an organized religion with rituals and rites. And again, side comment, Islam is no religion. There's no rights there at all. Yeah, so that was one thing that I would like to be, I'd like to basically highlight and call out before we run up this question. Other thing is, for goodness sake, stop saying, even if you like doing this physical prayer, stop saying the shirkiya things that you say in the physical prayer when you sit down in particular. Do not say salams to the Prophet. He has passed away. He's no longer here to listen to you. There's no one passing your salams from you magically to his rawda, to his grave. There's nothing like that happening. This is un-Quranic stuff. Get out of it. Snap out of it. Stop the salah Ibrahimiyya, the durood. Don't do that. Don't. If you want to connect to the divine, connect to Allah. Don't add people in your prayer. You do it, but don't add people to it. Don't make it pure shirk. So summary, you like doing the physical prayer. Awesome, great. Just don't impose it on others. Don't impose it on others, please. Also, don't call it Islamic. This is something you like. This is a cultural thing that has worked for a lot of people. It works for you, awesome. Let's just keep it there, yeah? Don't take it further. Don't be those who do iftira, because that is, or make up stuff. Man azlam mimman iftara ala Allahi al-kadhib. Who is worse than the person who makes up a lie in Allah's name? Don't be those people. Question number 4. Before I go on to it, I'll take a quick sip of water and I'll have a look at the comments as well. Sorry, I dropped the cap. Hope it wasn't very loud. A quick sip. In the meantime, I'm reading the comments. Right. Okay. Mahmoud is saying that traditional namaz can be manifested to connect with Allah. Correct. It can be manifestation if it works. As I keep saying, it works for you. Awesome, man. Do it. You know, who am I to stop you? I'm nobody's boss. I'm not the boss of you. Do what you like. Just don't call it Allah's thing. Don't call it their way. Yeah. There is. I think I talked about Rafi. There are many ways to contact me. You can ask me questions on the comments. I almost always answer. I have a way, and I'll talk about this as well. When I know not to engage with people, I'll pass you on that suggestion as well. But if you wish, best way is maybe to ask questions in the comments. You can also email me. My email is on the channel. I do live streams. I haven't for a while, but if you can make it, maybe come along to something like this where it's two-way, where we actually invite people up as well, so we can have a chat then as well. Assalamu alaikum to you, Abdullah. I'm just looking at a quick look at the comments. Okay, all right. We'll go on to the next question. Just making sure I haven't forgotten that. Yeah. So this question came up quite a few times as well. And that question, I think, is a fair one, because I had thought the answer was quite clear, but people kept on asking, which told me that, well, obviously I had to talk about this, which is, if I follow the Quran only, well, how do I do the salah then? If as-salah of the Quran, as you say, is not a physical act of worship, well, I want to do that. How do I do it? Where do I start? Right? So before I talk about it, reminder from the last slide, again, فَقْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. We are meant to clear our attentions. Let's unburden what we have listened, heard, absorbed. Listen to the Quran. Quran does not set a specific way of as-salah with him, but he doesn't deny a specific way either. What that means If you wish to do the as-salah with him or others, find a way that works for you, the individual. Do as-salah with Allah and all those around you. Read the Quran. These are just some ideas. Read the Quran. Engage it. Do yoga. Meditate. Help your neighbors. Cut the grass, sometimes. Be nice to the missus. Keep your children away from superstitions and useless rites. Educate people around you. Engage in science and arts and literature and philosophy. Enjoy these things. Enjoy the tayyibat that Allah has put for you in this world. Be happy. Be a just judge. Uplift your country, people through advances. There is no limit to how you do as-salah. There's literally no limit to it. To give you an idea, my way of doing as-salah with you, and through this process also strengthening my connection, is through this channel. I engage the Quran, I talk to you in these conversations that happen. This is the as-salah for me. It works for me. I find this refreshing. I find this reinvigorating. It makes me question things. You sometimes, through your comments, etc., interactions, give me ideas, avenues for thought, insight that I did not have before. This is a pure, perfect example of two-way communications being done for the right reason. This is my way of doing it. Works for me. You have to find the way that works for you. Question number 5. And we have 9 questions, so we don't have too much more to go for. And this is a question that I think some people will not like me talking about. And I'll talk a little bit about this as part of my summing up as well. Where I have ended up, can I say this word, pissing off? I've pissed off quite a few people throughout this journey. Some well-meaning people who have been working the Quran for quite a few times, but they have not yet seen or divorced themselves yet from the traditional customs. They don't appreciate what I have offered or what I've understood from the Quran. So the question in that vein is this: Moses, despite what you say, there are still some Quran-centric people who insist on the physical prayer. What do you say about that? Or how can there be difference between them? I think it's a fair question. Again, we should not shirk away from it. We should not deny it. Even in this circle where people refer to the Quran as the criterion, as the demarcator, as the judge, there are those who hold on to the physical prayer. They can't give it up. And they say that they've got evidence from the Quran as well. Well, I'd like to talk about this, yeah? So let's have a chat about this question. I say, with all respect, Quran, like any book in the world, Quran is a medium, end of the world. Again, before I get picked up on the semantics of what I say, the Mus'haf, in which is the Quran, the Mus'haf that we have uses words, uses reference. Now, this reference can be taken 2 ways. Words like up, down, faces, attention, hand, house. Either you can just take them as literal objects and you stay at that level. You say, whenever I'm going to say up or down or house, they are literal objects. They actually are physical manifestations, instantiations of the Platonic ideal that exists somewhere as well. So you, if I talk from a philosophical perspective, you are not a realist, but you live in an empiricist world where everything that you see, that you touch is the only thing that's worth talking about. And thus language also ends up getting molded to talk to those phenomena as well. You don't get out of that bubble. Everything that you see primarily refers to that. That is the perspective you come from. With respect, to me, it appears like we are forcing ourselves to not see the woods for the trees. We're operating at the cognitive level of a child. That's my opinion, with all respect. I say that another way of understanding those same words and reference is as reference to a higher sama, understanding that deals and talks to the nafs, the aql of the human. So if I really love Wittgenstein. If I talk from his terms, the only purpose of words is to impart a message. Once the message is passed, words don't matter. The specific form, the shape, the way it appeared, the order, the structuring, none of that matters so long the message got transformed. Now let's take a step further from here. Quran is from Allah. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that based on all of the work that I've done on the Quran so far. If the divine, the sublime, the unfathomable is communicating with us, how are we going to take it? Is he talking to us at the level of a child that we will forever be stuck at? Or is he referring, when he talks to the nafs, he gives us a book of guidance? Is he giving us markers to evolve our understanding, our intellect? What is he talking about? In other words, as I mentioned in the video on wudu, is the Quran a book of guidance for the nafs, for the human, for the aql? Or is it a book of toilet training and washing, and how to wash your hands and how to wash your arms and how to use sand or soil if you can't find water, and as such is only good for the body of the human? What is the Quran talking to? The nafs or the body? Is the Quran forced or stuck at the level of a child where everything points to very neatly to things that you see? Or are they taking you to where you should get to if you continue to engage the Quran? In that same vein, let's continue on. I think we have to remember this. We have to acknowledge the majesty of Allah. Allah, the divine, the unfathomable, the sublime, the greatest. He talks to us in the Quran. When I read this book and the way his words continue to be used in a specific way, consistently throughout the whole, I'm very honest when I say I do not find a physical prayer. I've tried. I've looked at those arguments where people do, and I'll talk about an example shortly. People do say, oh, no, there is physical prayer. We're going to grab this ayah and that ayah and that ayah and this little portion and that little portion. We're going to put it all together. We're going to patch it up. And in the end, you end up with a semblance of physical prayer. With respect, I apologize, but that is wrong. I really don't see it. The Quran, the sublime, the divine is talking to your aql, to your nafs. The intention is to uplift your thinking. It's not meant to make you into physical automatons going up and down. I'd like to give an example. Sajda, sujood. Again, comments came up quite a few times on that as well. Yes, sajda can also mean a physical act. I don't deny that. No one denies that. Sajda has got two meanings. It means a physical bowing, or it means an act or an action where you are carrying out a certain thing whilst in a certain state of sujood. You are carrying out an action because you believe that you should do, or you're forced, whatever the case might be. If you take a step back, they kind of mean the same. But when you come a bit closer towards the implementation of them, one is a physical thing, stops there. The other is something much greater, much grander. So how do you pick what? Well, I say, if you take sujood as physical acts, a base meaning that is correct. But when you read and take this term and apply this to the nas of the Quran, to the whole of the Quran as a whole, I argue that physical sajda, part of a physical prayer, does not stop fahsha or munkar. And this is just one argument that I think is enough for this exercise to fail. If you argue the sujood is literal, the people are actually putting their foreheads, not foreheads by the way, somehow very strangely their chins on the ground, but they're also on the foreheads getting physical marks because of the sujood. Well, what about all the other ayat of the Quran, where it explicitly says that if you were to do this salah, which has sujood, it should stop you from fahsha and munkar. And we all of us know it is not the case. I'm from Pakistan. With respect, I can say that I'm Pakistani. We are amongst the most, I think we have got more people who pray regularly as a percentage-wise than any Arab country of the world. Does Pakistan come up better because of that? Do we have no corruption? Do we have no fasads? Do we have no munkar happening there? Do we have no all the fahsha? By the way, this is not fahsha. It's not obviously anything to do with sex. But has all of those things stopped? They haven't. They continue to go on. Our lives are miserable despite the proliferation of people who do sujood every day, 5 times a day. So for those who say that, I apologize again. I think you should revisit. You should revisit this in the totality of the Quran. It is not what the Quran is talking about. It's not talking about. The only time sujood work, only time is when the sujood is to the nafs. The nafs of the human is being asked and is following that sujood. When the mu'mineen, those who spread peace, when they apply the message of hidayah as part of their sujood, then the society has no fahsha or munkar. Then the society, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that is when the mu'minun, they become successful. Those people, those people are working their asses off. They are working all day, every night. They're not stopping as part of their different forms of salah they're carrying out, as part of, and they keep doing the sujood as well. These are not those people who are going up and down 5 times a day in an orchestrated movement. So again, this is my last comment on this, and I'll move on to the next question. My respect to you. I don't doubt what your whoever's in that camp. I don't doubt their sincerity. I don't know anybody's. Nafs only has basira on itself. I only know about myself. I'd like to think with husn al-dhan that you have good heart, that you're coming from the right place. But if I'm being very honest, I would say that you should try and not be a blind adherent to textual literalism, but take a step back. Understand that the Quran is from Allah, the creator of all. He's talking to you, the nafs, for hidayah. What is he going to talk to you about? If I receive today a message from King Charles, what am I going to be expecting? Would he be praising my actions, or would he be telling me how to go and wash myself after number 2 in the toilet? If I don't expect this from King Charles, astaghfirullah, if I was to go and accept this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before I go on to the next question, there are 4 more questions. I'll have a quick look at the comments. Thank you, Brother Hamza. Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing my salah as part of this. And I'd like to think that it will help some people. I will learn through this that we are constructing a group of azwaj, not wives, azwaj, Quranic azwaj, like-minded people who work together to complete each other. I'm just looking at the comments. Brother Mushtahi is talking about Sufism. Yep, I don't know what the context there is. Tablighi Jama, yep, not, I think, relevant for me to talk about today. Brother Mahmoud is saying, yes, the religion Islam has pillars. Oh, pillows, you said. I know exactly where you're coming from, yes. Well, people can make up whatever they like, that's fine. You know, if you want to have an enterprise, that's fine. Just don't hijack this and paste on Islamic words and terms on it, Quranic terms. Don't misappropriate them is all I'd say. Okay, I'll go on to the next question. And this is, again, a question that's come up quite a few times. Moses, how come you are the first one to discover this secret in 15 centuries? Well, I'm going to break a myth. I am not a spy. I'm not a detective. I'm not anything like that. I'm not working in disguise. Yes, I use a pseudonym for reasons that Pakistanis know very well. I am no spy. I'm not out there to discover ancient, well-kept secrets. Banish that image out of your minds. Having said that, there is plenty of scholarship in 3 languages that I know, that I follow, that I understand: Arabic, English, Urdu. People who follow the Quran, they all say this. They have been saying this for a long time. They have been saying this across the centuries on purpose. And again, this is something that has made a few people angry. I don't refer to people, other scholars, or their works on purpose on this channel. Because anybody who's interested, with respect, all you need is a nudge. You shouldn't be spoon-fed. You shouldn't be expected to be spoon-fed. If you've got a nudge, go to the sources of knowledge and start your investigations there. Secondly, I have, throughout my experience, found that the moment we talk about people or their works or their ideas, we never talk about the Quran. We get sidetracked. We never get back to what we should be focusing on. Quran, let's just get back to it. It's a clear and closed system. Trust it yourself to learn this message. Don't get distracted by everything else out there. This person, that scholar, that view. That's not going to get you anywhere. Let's not become what our religious scholarship has become over the past 14 centuries. Let's not be those people. And also, this is something I genuinely believe. Let's say I was the only one, right? There's nobody else in the whole world who'd ever said what I've said. And this is the first time you have found me the only person saying that the Quranic salah is not the physical salah, or that the Quranic salah is different, that you do it all day, every day, throughout your lives, and that everybody does her own way. Let's say I'm the only one. Even then, if you were sincere, you read the Quran honestly, having cleared your wujuh, your wajh, your focus, your attention, your biases, etc., I think you will come away with this conclusion. Quranic terms of the Quran and the Quranic Islam is not the religion Islam we see around us. As-salah, tasbih, rijal, nisa, zawj, azwaj. None of those terms of the Quran mean what we find in today's Fusha Arabic or the Fiqhi Arabic or the Arabic of the court of Banu Abbas or the whole enterprise that's come up since. Quranic lisan, I should say, is not the classical Arabic, is not the MSA either. Quranic lisan is Quranic lisan. Quranic terms are Quranic terms. Let's never let them be polluted by how people use them today off the street. Have a quick look at the comments. Shukri Yusuf, I see you now. Assalamu alaikum to you. Thank you. Yubi, I don't know who you are, but you've been making a few comments. I see you making comments about tasbih. Again, as I said before, the Quranic tasbih has got nothing to do with the conception that comes into your mind of a monk sitting in a monastery going through beads, prayer beads. Banish this from yourselves. This is not the Quran. Absolutely not. This is an interesting point as well, obeys God. Why would the divine? Has the divine got nothing better than to ask you to go up and down 5 times a day? What benefit is that getting? Heck, if I was to make a game, right? Let's be honest. And there's something I like to talk about: singularity and AI and how that makes us think of the world. If I make an AI capable being in a game, let's say I'm using Unreal Engine 5, and I made this fantastic game, and I've got a being within the game, an NPC that can think, and he's got complete AI cognizance, he's got conscience and cognitive abilities, he can reason to a higher level, etc., make decisions. What would I rather have him do? Would I, as his God, let's be honest, would I, as God, have him bow down to me specific times of the day? Or would I rather give him the mandate and see how he performs it? What would be, I'm taking this with the ad absurdum, even me as a small little mini God, what would intrigue me, interest me more? Watching this guy do the same thing over and over that has no interest for me, or something that he goes out there and does by himself that I actually get to enjoy. And even if we are to what I'm saying is, even if we were to astaghfirullah, downgrade Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to a despot who wants nothing more than watching his minions go worship him in a devotional form, even if he were to do that, even then I'd like to give that being, fictional being, credit that being would want something more than just this mindless, numbing activity, that he would want some real action to happen. How many of us, when we watch Big Brother, or those of us who watch Indian, Pakistani TV, those reality shows like Big Boss, Big Brother, etc., how many of us would rather have people have action in the house where things are happening, part of natural progression, how people behave, versus every morning till the end being robots? Let's go on to the next question. So 3 more questions to go. Question: if I don't do the physical prayer, this is an honest question from people that has come up, a sincere question, and I acknowledge where people come from. If I don't do the physical prayer, Namaz, I'll be punished, won't I? Well, to answer this question, I'm a father. Let me give you an example that resonates with me. If I were to punish my daughter for not doing an action, but I never told her that I'd be punishing if she didn't do it, am I being fair? I punished her for not cleaning up afterwards, but I never said to her that, my daughter, whenever you eat and you don't clean up, I'm going to punish you. If I didn't tell her and I punished her anyway, would I be a reckless, mean father, or would I be a fair one? Let's take that into mind. Did Allah ever give you a warning for punishment if you did not do a physical prayer? Let's take this one step forward. Is there, even for not doing the Quranic salah, any punishment in the Quran? Does Allah in the Quran say, if you do not do Quranic salah, I'm going to punish you? going to put you into hell for 70 years, or when you die, you in your qabr, and these monstrous beings come out and they ask you, or when you go up and you're being asked, part of resurrection, and if you didn't pray, that's the first question you're being asked, then you're going to have all these sort of terrible things happen to you. Did Allah ever say that to you? Who said that to you? Not Allah. Not Allah. So there's no punishment. Well, why should you fear the punishment when the Ahkam al-Hakimin never told you about that? The only message given to Nabi Muhammad, Rasul Muhammad, the Quran that is with us, that he applied, has got nothing like that. And again, if I take it one more step further, Quranic Salah, even that is not Irmaduddin, it's not pillar of any religion. Again, whatever we've heard, it's got nothing to do with the Quran or the Islam that Nabi Muhammad followed. And this is a warning where I think I've been saying this all along. Long dead male theologians, I don't know who they were. I don't know their hearts, what was in their heart. Maybe they were sincere people. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. It's whatever they did is between them and their Lord. And they've all passed away. But let's not mix warnings of long dead male theologians with the message of the sublime, the holy Allah. Let's not mix the two. Let's keep the two separate. One does not belong with the other. It's as simple as that. Having a quick look at the comments. The diamond, not the topic for today. AY, primary duty, I believe, is to do ibadah. And ibadah, if you speak Urdu, we've done a video on that in Urdu, that in which we've gone in great detail to say ibadah is not, again, to do rituals or rites or anything like that. Yep, correct. Yeah, it is a connection with Allah and His system. Okay, let's go on to the second last question. Getting very close, getting very close to the end of this very long series, this very long, time-consuming, demanding series. Yes, that is a good point as well, obeys God. Allah does not have a need or desire to be praised. He is free. He's a ghani. He's ghani of everything like that. Question. But there's ijma, and we must follow the consensus. Ijma tells us there is this ritual, Islamically sanctioned prayer. We must follow it. Answer, there is, I say this again, there's no ijma on the term ijma. What does ijma mean? Is that ijma of scholars and people? Is that ijma of scholars and people of a certain time? Is it scholars of a certain sect, of a certain period? Is it X percentage of scholars? Is it all 100% of scholars? Is it scholars who have been practicing, their craft for 10 years, but not their students? Is it the students as well as the scholars? What does it mean? What does it mean? I don't know. I still don't understand. Ijma is unanimity. There's no room for doubt. Everybody agrees. This is not what we find anywhere. For those who wish to still hold to this argument, this flawed argument, logical flawed argument of appeal to majority, based on the Quran, I've done a video in English on this same channel, Majority is Wrong, and in which we went through some very eye-opening ayat of the Quran where Allah, the Creator, warns us not to be part of the majority. Be very wary the moment you are part of groupthink. Don't think that because you're part of the Jama'ah, you're going to be saved or that you are on the right path. Jama'ah, group of people, majority means nothing. Simple examples, we all know them. The Christians, they're more numerous than us, but do we call them right? The Jews, the Hindus, they've got an older history than us, and they appeal to history and tradition all the time, but yet don't we call their appeals to their tradition wrong? So just because these things we hold dear and near to us does not make them right. And specifically from a Quranic perspective, be wary, be very wary of majorities, because that's the moment groupthink, sheep thinking, sheep following kicks in, and we are no longer using the one faculty that Allah has given us that makes us distinguish from the other beings. That is aql, that is conscious, that is the ability to reason. The moment you stop doing that, well, are you a human then? Let's go on to the last question, and then we'll be on to the last parts of this this video of this series. Question: should I refuse to participate in the physical prayer? What about sensitive times like the Janazah or Eid? Again, a question that came up. I don't think it's an easy question to answer, nor does it have, it's an answer that will work for everybody in all the times. Your circumstances matter. Also, your safety matters. Maybe, depending upon all sorts of things and factors, you have to decide what makes sense in that time. Personally, and again, I'm not pushing my way on anybody. Personally, on principle, if my friends or at functions, people ask me to come up for physical prayer, I don't do that. I don't do that on purpose. My son and my daughter are there with me all the time. I don't want them to follow the masses. I don't want them to be sheep. I don't want them to just, in order to become part of the group, start doing things even when they know they're not right. So for me personally, I don't do that. But there are obviously occasions where that blind rule doesn't work. So I'm just being honest about that. Say Eid is a special time of the year. How can you not be part of that? Janazah is another one. There's a specifically emotive time. And I talked about it in the video as well. It's really for the living. It's not for the dead. So when we are gathering together on these events are not just religious. They've got cultural things. We're together for a specific purpose. Janazah, for example, is to celebrate the life of a loved one, help heal those who are distraught, etc., etc. Do I find this to be harmful if there was other religious rites around? I don't think so. So long, again, we're not confusing that specific part of the cultural gathering is the way ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as part of a religion. Okay, I'll have a quick look at the comments and then I'll go on to the next section. We're pretty much on the end. The Highlander, yes, Iqra. I think I talked about this in Urdu where we looked at the Quran and what I posited and I put forward was that Iqra does not mean read. Well, reading is part of the Iqra, but the Qira'ah the Quran talks about is way more. This is engaging with the ayat of Allah. Again, not just the verses we see, everything, ourselves, natural phenomena, archaeology, all of these ayat that we have around us, biology, etc., etc., we have to engage with them all. And this is the Qira'ah that Quran talks about, not just going A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I don't think there's any question in the screen in front of me that I can see. So we are going to go to, well, the end part of today's talk. My personal observations throughout this series. It is extremely difficult to unlearn and consider the Quran with virgin fresh eyes. And this is very much in evidence by the comments I have seen on the videos. I don't normally delete comments. Only time I would is if we've got people spamming or they are swearing. That's about the only time where, they would get themselves basically banned, because negativity of that level and annoyance and spam is not liked by anybody. But if you were to go through the comments, you will find those people who find it very hard to unlearn and look at the Quranic evidence. Even in the last, very last video of this series, of the Janazah, a person was asking, can you tell me if you do Namaz 5 times a day? And, well, I scratched my head. But end of the day, I acknowledge that this is not an easy ask. I didn't expect it, and this just got cemented as well. Also, personally, and I know people are asking me right now to do a series on Ramadan and Sawm and Siyam as well. I don't enjoy those topics personally. I'm being very honest. I think there's so much work done already that, and personally, I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing it for fame. I'm not trying to get anybody to fund my lifestyle or my work or my academic scholarship, anything like that. This is me doing my part of the Salah, and I'd rather focus on things that interest me. So Ramadan, Sawm, Siyam, I'm most probably not going to talk about for a long time because, frankly, I know the time it takes me personally to get to a point where I can talk about it, and I don't want to have that given up on at the expense of something I'd much rather work on. So I didn't want to do the Salat topic either. But having said that, because I've now done it, I think there are some takeaways that I did not expect that I've still picked up on as having done this whole exercise over 4 months. There's obviously a huge relief. To the best of my limited ability, and I must emphasize again, this is me offering my fam. Don't take it unquestioningly question this, confirm, cross-reference, I do feel relief. It took a while. I looked at the first video of the series as I was doing this, and I had a long list of questions I said I'd like to go through. I like to now say I've gone through all of them. So there is this natural relief that happened. But what also happened is my own connection with the Quran did grow with the series. There were ayat, there were certain parts of the Quran that I'd always thought very difficult or very untouchable, or if I ever tried getting into them, I had to unpack this and that, and I don't know if I've got the capability or this. I was surprised that the more I engaged with the Quran, the easier even those harder ayat became. So takeaway for you is don't be scared. Don't be scared. Don't just stay back. Surah Al-Jumu'ah, that was a real shock for me. So anybody who's not seen the Friday prayer series, go have a look at that. Even if you don't agree with everything I've done, have a look at that surah yourself with virgin eyes. Ignore the brackets, but anybody's translation you read. Just read the surah. It is not talking about a Friday prayer. What I understood from that surah shook me. It shocked me. It is not at all what I expected before I began. Same thing about the wudu ayah. There's no wudu, there's no toilet training being given by Allah that when you wish to connect, go wash your hands and wash your face, and by the way, somehow we got to clean our nostrils as well, etc., which breaks, by the way, if you were to pass wind. That ayah is a game changer. That is huge. When it talks about these terms like nisa, well, if you focus on that, you end up getting away from the point where we men end up subjugating women. We put ourselves as rijal, women as nisa. Well, that one ayah destroys that notion. Just that one notion, that one ayah destroys. Quran does not talk to the women. Quran does not talk to the men. Talks to the bashar, the nafs which is neither man nor female. What else? That ayah talks about wajh, your attention, your focuses, your marafiq, your ID, idiyakum and idikum. Again, different tashkil on those two words. Quran uses them differently. Even that one ayah, I think if you do nothing else, if you were to just pick up that one ayah and just work on that one ayah for a month, 2 months, every single term, take that ayah, every single term, take it, cross-reference, do tartil on the Quran, look at those parts. I think you'd come away impressed. Your worldview will change. It will, whatever asnam, again, asnam is not physical idols, whatever asnam and idols and aliha that you had in your mind, they'll all shatter. Those things will no longer stay with you. Quran will tell you that one ayah will open your mind. That ayah was a game changer. That one ayah. And that one ayah, by the way, is also why it's, I did not call it video 2 of the series. It's video 1.5 because it just, I think, stood out on itself. There were other things that I picked up that I want to work on. So Alif Khinjariya, for example, is a topic I want to work on. Riba, Az-Zakah, Kuffar, for example. There are many terms that are written, sometimes with 2 tashkil or sometimes with just Alif Khinjariya. And there's a lot of work in the, again, a lot of research out there that people are doing, people are working on. I think this is such an exciting time that we're living in, that we have got all of these people focused on the Quran, and people are working on things that interest them. They're not working for payments or for money. I'm not working for money, and I know most of those people aren't either. I don't want you to fund my lifestyle. I don't want to be beholden to anybody. Or if you give this guy this much money, then I want him to go and work on that. It doesn't work like that. There are people working out of their free desire to learn the Quran and talk about it and spread the knowledge and the love and build a circle where we can have these conversations like this. Be a part of them. You should be one that is picking up something that appeals to you and sharing your knowledge. It's a topic I'd like to talk more about and work more on. Again, in the last video, as I was working on it, I realized that there are some terms. I talked about this in the older video. There are terms that I want to work on more. Quran's maut, wasiya, wafat, amwat, etc. Quran uses them very differently. What are the differences? What does it mean? I'd like to work more on that. Again, these are things that the Quran is guiding me towards based upon my inclination, where my knowledge is, where my brain basically finds appealing. But yeah, I would, again, encourage wudu ayah. Just study the one ayah if you do nothing else. Last 3 points on this page. I also confirmed, even in today's video, there were a few people like that. Quran is mahjur, is discarded in our lives. We know more ahadith, riwayat, Israeliyat in their terms than the Quran. That is the simple truth. So when the Rasul said, قَالَ رَبِّي إِنِّي قَوْمِي اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا, Oh my Lord, verily my qawm, that includes us, has left this Quran as if it was thing you had migrated from. That rings very true to me now. It's very resonant. Quran is there, we don't engage with it. It's there, we recite it, we've got competitions on who does the best tilawa. Tilawa does mean something else in the Quran. We don't follow it, we don't even know what it says. Quranic terms have been kidnapped, hijacked. This is a thing that gets me in trouble, sadly. This thing gets me in trouble always with the traditional circle, but I have to say this. Quranic Islam, Quranic terms is one thing. The religion being paraded today, also called Islam, is something different. A forgery has happened. One has been kidnapped, hijacked by the other. Quranic Islam that Nabi Muhammad followed is not at all what people are following today in the religion called Islam. And why does it happen? Because 1200 years later, from the Abbasid era, where all of these things had crystallized and formed and fossilized, we are still told that we have to understand Islam through the muddy prism of people who died all that time ago. Whoever those were, I don't know. Maybe they were good people. But their prisms, their limited understanding based upon their time and their worldviews and their competing interests, that is the standard for me. You say, I must follow if I have to understand the Quran. No wonder I don't understand the Quran then. No wonder it is an enigma. No wonder it is hard. No wonder I find more interest in reading titillating tales, astaghfirullah, about the private life of Rasul Muhammad with his wives, or these strange Israeliyats about things and rocks talking and this happening and people flying up to the heavens and these negotiations happening. This is bound to happen if we don't let the Quran talk on its own right. This is another point, and I can see right now in the comments, there's this fellow brother, I think Yubi. How do I say to him? How do I tell him that despite what it says, the Quran is not saying that at all? It is hard for people to accept that Allah is not a theologian. Let me say that again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a theologian. He does not give you minutiae and rules upon rules upon rules like that what Nabi Musa's people wanted and craved. He doesn't give you that. Why do you want it? Allah didn't give it to you. He wants to make things easy for you. Again, I think some of this ayat that we covered in the video, he wants, actually the wudu ayah, he wants to be things to be yes or easy for you. He wants that. We want rules. How do I wash my hands? What hand do I use for my nostrils? If I break break wind, what do I do after? If I'm doing number 2 and I'm away from water, what do I do? How many leaves must I pick up? What grass type is okay? Astaghfirullah, why are you ascribing all this to Allah? Why? Personally, on my working on a lot of these topics, Janaza was a hard one. That video was a hard one to make, and I think the comments kind of showed that as well. It is a hard, emotive time when it happens. Personally, for me as well, and I think I have talked about this before. I am, more so than my children, I am part of my culture where all of these things, Eid, the Friday prayer, the Janaza, etc., they were part of my upbringing. I can never divorce them from my outlook, from my memories, from what or from the feelings that I feel when I see or hear or interact with these events. I just have to remind them that these are not religious activities. But it was hard, despite that, to talk about that. Same thing I found in the Durood video. Durood, as we say in Urdu, Hindi, Salat Ibrahimiya, Salat ala Nabi. Very hard for the audience, especially I think in the Urdu world. People are not happy that, well, per Quran, there's no sanction to say Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or wa alihi wasallam, as Shia brother add on quite easily. Not an easy thing to talk about. People don't like it, didn't like it, but I felt I had no choice but to talk about it and round up this topic. This is a reminder. I'm on the second last point. I'm looking at the comments. I've talked with people over the past, 4 or 5 years now. WhatsApp calls, Telegram chats, part of language exchange programs that I've talked with, my own friends on WhatsApp groups back home. I've done, or even face-to-face. I've talked to them, and this is my summary. It is not my job, it is not your job, nor can you convince or force others. Our job is to pass the message. That's it. We do not hate others. I don't hate anybody in particular. If a brother of mine, whether he's a traditional Muslim, follower of a religion called Islam, where there are pillars and this and that and minutiae, that is his choice. If he is honest to himself in what he's doing, that is between him and Allah. It's not for me to judge. I am not here to pass a judgment on him. Same thing goes for even anybody really. My job is not to force the message. In my own family, I'll admit this, my mother, she has been hijacked by the Tayar al-Wahhabiyya, by the Wahhabi strain of Islam, where she's doing all sorts of things she never did in her life. Can I convince her? Can I make her see the Quran? No. What does that make me? Does that make me weak? Does that make me useless? Does that make me futile? No, all I see is that the Quranic message of the qasas that I read all the time is the same. People will only see and follow the Quran and Allah's simple message if they want to. If they are open, they'll listen. If they don't, there's no argument in the world that you can craft. There's no one ayah. One of the brothers was asking this question. Brother, there's no one ayah I can give you. There's no 10 ayah. There's no elegant argument that if I present in front of you or you to them, they'll say, brother, I see it now. I give up all of that. Just doesn't work like that. I have tried miserably. I've tried and I've failed miserably. Even in the comments, in the beginning videos, there would be these long comments, comment, reply. In the end, the person would just not accept the Quran as being enough. And I would not accept, and I would just continue on. It would never go anywhere. Don't force people. Don't convince people. If they don't get it, they don't get it. Hopefully they'll come around. If not, Allah is the judge. He knows what difficulties they had in their life. It's not for you to judge. It's not for me to judge. Let's not become their judges. Let's not become the executioners or the jury for them. Let's just not do that. Another reminder, and this is with all respect, I'll remind to everybody, for goodness sake, don't debate with people this is my experience. I used to speak quite a bit to ex-Muslims, so-called ex-Muslims, who are making money on YouTube now because they bring out the worst in the religion Islam. In even that part, they embellish to make it look even worse. Some of this is true, some of this is false, but what they sell is for the audience that hates Muslims in Islam, and they make money out of it. I argued with them reasonably. I argued, and those who know, they know what I'm talking about. I've had many chats with them over the time. And what did I learn? Nothing. I could not, after all of this, have any one of them give 1 inch to me. I see the same thing with our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters. The moment you enter into discussion with somebody, even if they're Muslim, if they are not willing to trust the Quran, or if they're Muslim and they say, Quran isn't enough, I can see comments in there again, a brother of ours, selling Sunnah to complete the Quran. I can see that comment right now, as I'm talking, as if my words are just not following, he's hearing, he's not listening. Again, I'm not pointing at you, brother Yubi, and I think I know who you are. If you're listening, if you're hearing, you're not listening. You don't want to listen. There's a covering that somehow filters everything I say. No matter what argument I put, I've done this over five hours and adding these 2 or 7 hours now. There's a lot of work on the Quranic ayat, including the ones you talked about, but they won't work for you unless you want to listen. For me, I don't worry about it. It's not my problem. Hidayah is for Allah to give to one who wants it. I pass the message. Somebody doesn't want to take it, or they think the Quran is imperfect, that the Sunnah or the Ahadith, the complete Quran, well, it's not logically correct. And if they don't see how belittle they do the Quran, then that's between them and their Lord. It's not for me to judge. I'll have a quick look at the comments, any other comments that came in, and then I'll go on to the last two very small sections of the video, and then I'll finish up. Darth Vader, AY. Ah, yes. Well, yes. When I say 1200 years, I refer to the Abbasid period, where we find the fiqh of Islam really become crystallized. Before that, it was in flux, but that is a time where I kind of picked that to say we see the semblance of a fully formed religion being passed on as a package, which has got sunnah and hadith and the faqih, who has now taken on a great responsibility and great role in the society compared to what he had before. But if we go all the way back in time, as I said, I think 30 years after the Prophet, the time after his death to the first 30 years after, that is the time, the key period where if you know any good academic resources you can pass on to me, please do. I am very intrigued to learn more on that topic. All right, okay. I will continue on to the second last part of the video. For goodness sake, for Allah's sake, don't follow me. Don't follow anybody. Don't follow any man. Don't follow any woman. No matter who the person is in front of you, don't follow them, including me. I am not your source of truth. That person, that imam, not your source of truth. That great scholar of the Quran, not your source of truth. Even if that person that you see who talks only about the Quran and nothing else, even he is not your source of truth. Don't be swayed by the words, the diction, the style of delivery, the intonation, feeling. Refer it all back to the Quran. After what I've done and said throughout the series and today, refer it, cross-reference it, check it against the criterion that the Quran gives you. Yeah, we have to be very careful. We don't put bashar, we don't put people, fallible people, between us and Allah. We've got His Risala. Read it, engage it. I personally, I've been saying this throughout this journey, I am only a student of the Quran. I offer my fahm at this time for two main reasons. A, I like the idea that we're building these circles of knowledge where we can talk about these things, and I look at the example of the Quranic Zawj, where I lack, you complete me out. Where you lack, I complete you out. And together we are breaking the shackles that have blocked the intellectual growth of us as people who should be doing more with the Quran. I really like that aspect of what I'm doing here. What I also like doing, despite being a student and talking about the Quran, is when I pick a topic, the reason I'm not doing the Siyam topic, I really get into, personally, in the nitty-gritty to the level where I end up spending a lot of time. But because when I do that, I really engage the Quran, I pick up a lot of gems, a lot of ideas, a lot of insights, and the Quran continues to open and open, and I like doing that. So what I'm saying to you is, don't make me your Qibla, don't make me your source of truth. I'm just saying the same thing again to you, but same goes for anybody else as well. I'll repeat this. No matter who that person is, don't let them be the one that becomes your source of truth. Use them, use me. Anything that I can offer, take it. Don't give me credit for it afterwards. I don't care. Quran is the reference, is the source. Use it. Critique what I said. Don't even talk about me, that I heard from this guy who said this. I don't mind. I don't care. We're all talking back to the Quran. Take the message, apply it. If it is wrong, correct me. If I don't listen, ignore me, move on. Do what you think is right based on the Quran. Give proper evidence and be honest to yourselves. That is what matters. Trust Allah. Trust the intellect. Trust the aql that He has given you. Trust that if you make a mistake, He knows your intention. Be sincere. Be open-minded. Consume knowledge from everyone. I learn from everybody. Which is areas, and I think I've talked about this before in the Urdu series. I don't hate the traditional clergy at all. I've learned a great deal. There are many, I don't talk about people, but there are many traditional scholars that I'm indebted to. I love some of the insights that they've given me. I have no hatred in my heart for them. I don't know their circumstances. They were products of their time. I am of mine. My children are, well, they are part of their own generation, to each their own connection with Allah. I've learned from them, the religious scholars, whether they're Shia or Sunnah, doesn't matter. I've learned from them. I have learned from Christians. I have learned from people of other religions. My wife knows this. When we got married, I would take her to this very many, as part of my yearning at that time, to different religions, temples and circles and this and that. We did all. I learned everywhere. Even those discussions that I mentioned before with the ex-Muslim movement that is out there just to make money. Even I learned a few things from them. One must be open to learn, consume from all buyut, Quranic concept. All of these sources, they can enrich us, but we don't have to be bound to one. The Quranic ilm is not filtered through one person or one association or one particular way of thinking. Use your aql, trust Allah, take knowledge from everywhere, refer it back to the Quran. Refer it back to the Quran. It is a very simple thing. Do not confuse that. Okay, have a quick look at the comments. Yep, that is a method of Ibrahim. I like to talk about Ibrahim more, Darth Vader. In Urdu, because the concept of Ibrahim, what Nabi Ibrahim did, has always intrigued me. Why him in the Quran and nobody else given as much of a stature that we find for him? And just a passing comment. You know how we say he is the one who went out and broke the idols and smashed up the idols, and then the biggest idol, he gave him the X, put the X in its hands and said, oh, look, this guy did it. I've made this comment before. If I did this today to a Hindu temple to prove to them that their stone gods are nothing, they're useless, they've got no power, they put me to jail today. If they did the same thing, by the way, to us today, they came to a masjid, we call masjid, then they demolished it and said, look, there's no proof for Allah. If there was Allah, he would have protected your masjid. Look, hence, there's no Allah. We'll put them into jail. And that is what got me started. And I found, and I've talked about this, Ibrahim did nothing of that sort. He was not the man that we are to follow who went out in a rage to smash people's religious objects. So again, use your intellect, use your aql. You heard this from me today, right? Sounds interesting. Don't buy it just because I said this. Go look it up in the Quran. If you're not there yet, keep working. One day, eventually, if you're sincere, Allah will give you the hidayah. Okay, I will. Ibrahim is my favorite Nabi story. Sister Qudsiya is saying, okay. This is a final summary, and this is a very short summary. And I did say in the very beginning, didn't I, that I will have a one-line summary of the whole series. I will have that. I will talk about it. And there'll be a 0.5, a little advice as well that I'll give. Then we're getting to the end. We are at the end. Not getting, we are at the end. So 4 months, 13 videos later, about 7 hours of recorded video, countless hours of research later, around 100 ayat later, this is the final takeaway of this whole series. Do as-salah. Find your way, opportunity to connect with others, including the divine. Continue to do it, refine it, improve it throughout the day, every day, throughout your life. If I had to boil everything that I've talked about so far into one sentence, this is what I would offer. And a final piece of advice. Again, as a father, probably feel more moved by the requirements of fatherhood that we have to teach and mold the children whilst we can before they go their own way. You have them for a little while, for a very little while. They'll be their own people soon. If you have children, teach them the Quran and its as-salah before the religion hijacks their thinking and their fitrah. Before they start thinking of Quranic terms the wrong way, they start hating the other, start hating the so-called non-Muslim, the one that they'll be told is one who does not do the ritual prayer or does not say the shahadatain and begins to hate them. Before that happens to your children, don't let them be hijacked. Teach them the Quran. Let them love the other despite the differences, despite the disagreements. That is the way we should live. That is part of your salah as well, if you're a father, or a mother, or a parent, or a guardian. Okay, I'll have a very quick look at the comments. I'll go scroll up a little bit as well. And this will be, after this will be the last, I'll mention one Quranic ayah and then I'll finish. We'll finish this series up with the ayah of the Quran. But before I do that, I'll have a quick look. So if there were questions that I've missed that you would want me to quickly refer to, and they are relevant to what we've talked about today, maybe write them now. I'll have a look, and I'll try and see if I can answer them. So I'll scroll up. I can, Sister Fatima Shin, Assalamu alaikum to you as well. Darus Salam, exactly. This is where we should be, what we should be heading towards. Religion indeed has worship, idol worship, emotional attachment. I think I have covered everything. Okay. We will do our last ayah, and this will be the last ayah of this series, and we're going to finish this topic on that note. Allah says, not me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the one, the sublime, says this. الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه أولئك الذين هداهم الله وأولئك هم أولو الألباب. Who listen to the al-qawl, these who listen to the al-qawl, the speech, the Quran, and follow the best of it. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَ, and follow the best of it. Those are the ones Allah has guided, and those are people of understanding. Like I said before, let's try and be from the ulul albab. Let's be from those who Allah guide because they strive for guidance. Until the next time, this is me signing off on this series. And until the next time, this is Salam Alaikum from you. Keep well, keep learning.